Newport-Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions, is brought to you by Newport-Fersan Jamaica Limited, the first on the land.
Time now for Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions, and this morning's all about soil and soil health. Melvin Henry's technical manager now joins us. Good morning, Melvin. Melvin, how are you?
Good morning, Altia. I'm doing fine. Good morning to our listeners.
Good to have you on with us. Melvin, obviously, soil is very important to any agricultural operation, unless, of course, you're going into other types of agriculture. But for the main part, uh, most of our farmers, they really are practicing their agriculture in soil, and so soil health is critical. But I want to start with the question, not on focused on soil health. I'll come to that. But there's something else that you're going to be discussing this morning, which is important, and I need a working definition for it. Soil organic matter. What exactly is soil organic matter?
Okay. So, as you rightly stated, Altia, a high percentage, the higher percentage, certainly in excess of 95% of our production takes place within the soil, in the soil, and as a result of that, it is therefore very important that we understand what is happening with our soils so we can get the best returns or output in terms of how our soils deliver. As it relates to soil organic matter, commonly referred to as SOM, being abbreviated, this is pretty much the remains of plants, animals, microbes that were once alive. So you'd appreciate that once an organism dies, it breaks down, and ultimately, during that breakdown process, it moves and transitions to what we refer to as organic matter. Now, depending on the literature that one may read, you will see that some experts strikes a distinction between organic matter and organic material. Now, organic material in some contexts refers to the distinguishable parts of an organism. So you're able to see a leaf, a piece of a stem, a fruit, roots. That is material. And then once it transitions beyond that level, that you're no longer able to distinguish whether it is coming from a stem, a root, a leaf, then it's organic matter. To many, it is pretty much neither here nor there based on the benefits derived, but just clarifying that point that you will have literature that makes a distinction, and so you'll understand that one transition into the other.
Right, and that is very important for us to make that distinction. As you speak about transitioning from one to the other, what does the term soil health mean?
Okay, so in human health, and just to draw a parallel for ease of understanding, there are certain parameters that are used to determine whether or not I am healthy, you are healthy. And you'll normally hear some of the common parameters looked at, being your blood pressure level, your blood sugar level, cholesterol level, heart rate might be factored in as well. So in a nutshell, all of these come to bear on how well the body as a system functions. In soil health, the soil has vital roles to play, and so it should function as a vital, what we call living ecosystem, meaning that there are a number of lives within the soil, billions, trillions of lives within the soil, each having its own role and function. And as a result of that, how well the soil is able to accommodate and facilitate the roles of these organisms and to support and sustain the growth and productivity that we so desire is actually what we're referring to when we speak of soil health. So one of the parameters or characteristics of a healthy soil is that it has adequate microbial activity. And microbes, as we know it, are very minute organisms, fungi, bacteria, and others that supports the soil in its function. And so, for example, when you apply a common fertilizer that most of our farmers, all of our farmers are aware of, is urea, that white prill. Urea, when applied to the soil in that state, is of little or no use to the plant if it is not broken down or changed into another form that the plant can actually uptake for growth and development. So there are certain strains or species of bacteria within the soil that actually releases an enzyme, urease, that breaks down the urea into ammonia. Ammonia then transitions to ammonium and the nitrate in another process. And it is those forms of nitrogen that the plant actually utilizes. So it stands to reason that if it is that you have a soil that does not have adequate adequate population of these microorganisms to produce the hormone necessary to break down urea, then it therefore means that your quest to get nitrogen from urea would be compromised. And as a result of that, we try to ensure that in terms of facilitating and ensuring that these organisms can survive well, it is something that we focus on. And soil organic matter plays a critical role in ensuring that you have an habitable area for these organisms to facilitate the entire process. Another is that the soil should have an efficient water management system. And by this we mean that the water, as we know it, is critical to the existence of life. Now, depending on where you are, the soil type that you're operating on, the sort of a rainfall pattern that you're experiencing, the soil plays a critical role in terms of how it manages what it is being exposed to in terms of rainfall. So you really want to have a situation where you're able to retain moisture, adequate moisture enough to supply or support the growth and development of your plant, so you can have the bountiful yield that you so desire. And at the same time, the structure of that soil must be of such that it also facilitates adequate drainage. Because beyond a certain threshold, once water accumulates to a certain level within the root zone of the plant, what it actually does, it dispels, it prevents the movement of air. And as a result of that, you'll have a situation where practically, and in simple terms, your roots stifles. They cannot. And there are only a few species of plants that have root system that can tolerate, in agriculture, that high level of moisture content. So these are just some of the characteristics or features of healthy soil, and these are some of the things that we strive to ensure that we attain, and soil organic matter plays a critical role in us achieving these.
All right. So having made that connection between soil organic matter and soil health, how does one determine the percentage of organic matter of soil?
Okay, so there are several methods that are used, and with the advent of technology, we'll in short order, or in some quarters, we're already seeing where there are electronic devices that are used to determine the soil organic matter percentage. But simply put, a lot of the initial work, the early work with determining the soil organic matter percentage has to be done in a laboratory setting. So, for example, when we facilitate soil testing here at Newport-Fersan, once that soil sample reaches the lab, the first parameter that is reported on, and we're always happy about that, is actually the soil organic matter content. It's the first parameter. So nutrients, levels, pH, all of those come after. The first one is the organic matter content. Now, the devices that are being developed are those that you can actually probe, insert within the soil, and what it does is that it measures the amount of available carbon. Now, from that reading, you're able to calculate, because on average, 58% of organic matter is actually carbon. So if you're able to measure accurately what percentage of carbon exists within the soil, then by extrapolation you can calculate what the organic matter percentage is. But by and large, this is facilitated now on a very large scale within a laboratory setting.
Now, I'm certain that there are farmers out there who might have questions, Melvin, in terms of the ideal percentage for soil organic matter for agricultural purposes. And I know that because you've been doing a significant amount of work in soil testing, I wondered whether or not you can also share with us, from your knowledge and experience, what the picture looks like in terms of organic matter levels across the island.
Okay. So, as you rightly say, Althea, we have been for more than a decade here at Newport-Fersan engaging our farmers in at least once every 2 years. Let us have a look at what the soil parameters look like. And when we look at soil organic matter levels, again, depending on where you are, depending on the subclimates, dependent again on the how the land is used, we're seeing, and if I'm referring to raw numbers, at least 55% of our soil sample results coming back from the lab showing that there is need for attention, and that is on a global scale. And what do I mean by that? So whilst there is not a clear-cut ideal range that can be cast in stone, in iron, and you say this is it, there has to be an assessment of, as I said earlier, the soil type that you're working in. So if you're working with soils that are sandier in nature versus soils that have a higher clay content, and there's a need for you to have a higher percentage of organic matter in your sandier soils, becomes more imperative compared to your clay soils.
So hold on, Melvin. It sounds to me then it's going to be, that soil testing process is going to be very critical in terms of helping you to make a determination as to in which direction you need to go on your particular farm. But hold on to the response. Going to take the break and come right back.
Farmers, are diamondback moths, cabbage loopers, armyworms, budworms, cutworms, melonworms, aphids, leaf miners, whiteflies among those pests threatening to strike your crop? Well, wait no longer. Strike first with First Strike Insecticide from Newport-Fersan, Jamaica Limited, the first on the land.
We're inside the feature First and in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions. This morning, we're taking a look at soil organic matter, an important component of soil health, with Melvin Henry, Technical Manager. He has already told us what soil organic matter is and the connection between soil organic matter and soil health. And we've been talking to him about how to determine the organic matter percentage of soil. But also, very importantly, Melvin has pointed out that, listen, 50% of the land that we're using for agricultural purposes, it is going to need some kind of assistance in terms of soil organic matter. And so that soil testing system that they have there at Newport-Fersan clearly is very important in providing a picture of what is happening with the different soil types in which they come in contact. And so, Melvin, I want you to pick up and then, of course, want to hear about the key role that soil organic matter will play in ensuring that we have healthy soils for production.
Okay. So I couldn't have said it better than you did, Altia, when you highlighted the fact that it is critical that at regular enough intervals, and we normally recommend around about 2 years, that there is an assessment of what is happening soil-wise. And in addition to us being able to determine the soil organic matter content, which is reported on the test results, we're also able to determine from that said report the textural class of the soil, meaning whether the soil is sandy and to what degree loam, clay. So it gives us a clear indication. Now this is very important because you could have a soil, two soils that have, let's use for this conversation, a percentage, and we're using the lower limit, a 3% soil organic matter content. But when we look at the textural class, one of these soils is actually sandy compared to another that is a clay loam soil. Now, whilst the optimum range for agricultural purposes falls between, and again, because of the difference in the different soil types, between 3% and 5%, you could see your response in terms of bringing some level of satisfaction to how these soils will perform being different. So the same soil organic matter content, but because they are two different textural class, one being sandier, one being a clay loam, then your approach in terms of getting your fix, your desired fix, will certainly be different. So in terms of the key role, so we're talking about how important soil organic matter is to the overall discussion of us realizing a healthy soil environment. So the question is, what are some of the roles that organic matter really plays within the soil? And one of them is that, and a lot of farmers appreciate and know this one very well, that organic matter, despite very low, supplies nutrients to the soil. So it stands to reason that if it is that you had a plant that was comprised of nutrients and now this plant breaks down within the soil, it will release. So again, the activities of these microorganisms in the soil enables the plant to break down, and in so doing, releases nutrients. And for this reason, once we receive a soil test result and we're designing a nutrient management program for farmers, we pay close attention to the organic matter percentage. We also pay close attention to the season in which this crop will be established. And I'll explain why. Now, it is well documented that for every 1% of organic matter content found within the soil, you can actually derive 10 to 30 pounds of nitrogen on an annual basis. So it therefore means if you have a percentage of 1, for that entire year, you could get a maximum of 30 pounds of nitrogen from that, or at the lower level, 10. Now, the reason why there is a range is the release of nitrogen from organic matter is directly tied to your moisture level within the soil as well as temperature. So the higher your moisture level is and the higher your temperatures, the faster the rate of breakdown. If it is that you have high temperatures but low moisture level, then the process of disintegration or breaking down of those organic matter will be slow. So that is why you actually have a range. And so it is that you'll have two farmers establishing the same crop, let's say watermelon, and you'll notice that one farmer, if they're looking at the programs they receive, one will notice I'm saying, okay, apply 120 pounds of nitrogen for the crop life. And for another, I might be saying, apply 80 pounds of nitrogen for the crop life. And then they'll start to wonder, the same crop, the same acreage, why is there the difference? The difference is, when you look at the organic matter content, we do a calculation of what contribution we will derive. And I said watermelon because by far the parish of St. Elizabeth and on the south, to be specific, and South Manchester, where our farmers practice a lot of mulching, what we see happening from time to time is that their soil organic matter content is very high. Now, if you have a very high soil organic matter content, you're applying water. A lot of these farmers, they do irrigation and fertigation. They have high temperatures. It simply means that there will be a high release of nitrogen. And if it is that you apply nitrogen, not bearing that release from the organic matter content in the entire picture, you could have a situation where you're oversupplying nitrogen to the crop. And as a result of that, some of the consequences are you have higher incidence of pest and disease because those are like magnets for pest and disease issues, excess nitrogen. You could have a situation where you start to see a lot of fruit, young fruit fall and blossom abortion as well because the nitrogen level is just too high. So determining via soil test exactly what the OM content is very critical in us getting to where we want to in terms of productivity with our crops.
Very important information being shared. And Melvin, we do have people who are asking questions as well. Let me just share one, not necessarily directly related to what you're saying, but good to know that our people are sitting up and paying attention. It says, if microbes, good morning, Melvin, if microbes are important to release nutrients in the soil, how does the hydroponic environment compare?
Okay, so the first thing there that inherent within the question is a suggestion that the liquid formulation or the solution that the plants exist in an hydroponic system is void of microbes. The reality is that these, and let's call them guys, these guys are everywhere. So they exist in water, they exist in soil, and just by extension, just to clarify, when we refer to hydroponics, we're also referring to those inert materials that are used. So for example, cocoa peat, those are also forms of hydroponic systems that are used. And just to say that if you should do what we call a bioassay, an assessment of the different species that exist in these medium, you will realize that you do have quite an amount of these organisms present to execute the role and functions. And by nature, a lot of times their introduction actually comes with you placing the plant from, you're coming from a potting medium, all of that. You have microbes virtually everywhere, and nowhere is spared from their presence, and you do have those beneficials existing at large as well.
All right. Thank you very much for that. And we're going to then pick up on this whole issue of the organic matter and how the farmers now can ensure that they have the right amount of soil organic matter. Is there a situation, Melvin, in which the soil organic matter content is classified as being too high? And what are some of the steps necessary to improve the fertility of this type of soil?
Okay, so you very rarely, but it does happen in our peat soils where you could have the accumulation of organic matter to a percentage where you're no longer achieving the desired role, all the desired roles. So let's look, for example, we mentioned that soil organic matter aids with water retention. So the ability of the soil to hold moisture is directly linked to the percentage of organic matter. And we speak about water management in terms of drainage and retention. Now, once you pass a certain threshold in terms of having organic matter content, you sacrifice having good porosity, meaning space within your soil particles for water to enter, here to enter, and your soil moves to what we refer to as being more peaty and muck. Simply put, in an environment like that where it is too high, what tends to happen is that a lot of your beneficial microorganisms, which are actually aerobic, meaning that they rely on oxygen for survival, can no longer survive in those conditions. And the sad thing that happens is that there are some that doesn't necessarily depend on oxygen for survival, and those are more likely and more normally the ones that are deleterious or causes a lot of problems to our root system. So if the organic matter reaches that level, you're over retaining water, you're excluding the presence of your beneficial microbes, you're also facilitating the explosion of the population of those that are going to cause harm to your root system, then that becomes an issue. How do we fix that problem? One of the ways that this can be fixed...
Don't tell me how you fix it yet. When we come back from the break, you tell us. Rounding out our conversation now with Melvin Henry, Technical Manager, Newport-Fersan, Jamaica. Our focus this morning on soil organic matter, an important component of soil health. Melvin has guided us masterfully through the soil organic matter. What is it? The whole issue of soil health and, of course, the relationship between good soil health and soil organic matter. And as part of the solutions, Melvin was just about to talk to us about how it is that you can fix those problems that have been identified with soil organic matter. Melvin, go right ahead.
Okay. So if it is that we determine that the levels, and this is by and large the scenario or the case that we're observing in most parts, most of our production zone, is that the soil organic matter is falling below 3%, which ideally we want to be above 3, around about 5, thereabout, to sustain all the functions we spoke about. There is need to engage in a number of practices. One of them is that by nature, because of the practices of some of our farmers and the crops that they have been planting, they tend to remove a lot of the plant residue from the production area. And as a result of that, those plant materials don't have the chance of disintegrating, breaking down, and being incorporated into soil. They're normally, in a lot of cases, pulled from the area, sometime burnt, or thrown in an area where they have little or no benefit to the soil itself. So to reverse that situation, there has to be the deliberate attempt on the part of the farmer to ensure that green plant residue overall. And as I cited, St. Elizabeth is doing exceptionally well on the south because of their cultural practice of mulching with grass. So that helps. The opposite, where you have, and it is not even one that we really need to address because to date I have not seen that scenario here. I mean, if you move closer towards the mangrove there on the banks, you might find situations where the percentage of OM is high. But it is not a situation that if that's the case that we need to reduce, one of the things that reduces the organic matter content is plowing. So you deep plow, you enable the soil to be aerated. So once oxygen is able to reach the organic matter content, it is able to burn, in a sense, break down. So the incorporation of manures, well broken down manures, is something that we do to increase the organic matter percentage. And I stress well broken down because there are a number of organisms that thrive on manure that is not well broken down, and these can become very, very dangerous, not just for human health, but animals as well. So there are certain strains of bacteria and other organisms that, like for example, E. coli, that love the unbroken. So once it's past a certain stage, we normally say between 3-6 months, having been spread, turned, that sort of a thing, and until you're standing beside it but not necessarily smelling it is one of the indicators of its readiness for incorporation in the field, then it's good. So that is something that we pay close attention to, because you could be cultivating, let's say for example, leafy vegetables, and you incorporate fresh manure and you find traces of these microorganisms, and normally the effect is that they normally trigger stuff like diarrhea and stuff like those. So it is very important to ensure that the protocols are followed in terms of at what stage do I incorporate manure to increase the OM content of the soil. And in so doing, we prevent a number of the challenges that some of our farmers are facing, and one of them is the inefficient use of water. So just for clarity, for every 1% of increase in organic matter content, you're actually facilitating the retention of 25 gallons of water per acre. So if you increase it by 0.25%, quarter of a percent, it means that you give the soil the chance to retain 6,250 gallons of water for plant use. And this is significant. It therefore means that if your soil organic matter content is excessively low or falls below that 3, what you'll see happening is that at high frequency, in order to keep that plant alive and to sustain that plant, the farmer will have to be applying at very high frequency water, because that water you applied earlier is not retained and made available for use by the plant. And one of the factors contributing to that low water retention within the root zone is actually the absence of the ideal range of soil organic matter. So once you fix that, you start to see your bill, for example, for water going down. You have a rainfall, you don't benefit much after a rainfall if it is that your soil organic matter content is too low. So I would suggest that we periodically do the analysis, get the test done, and we take steps, because if you look at it, and the farmers will tell you that it's a very expensive venture to purchase water for irrigation purposes. So if it is that you can over time take steps to improve the capacity of the soil to retain moisture, then I think that's a worthy cost, and in the long run you'll save some of the bucks that would have been used to do frequent replenishing of water.
Right. Melvin, we're entirely out of time, but I must tell you, this has been very important, interesting, and engaging as usual. And I do look forward to having you come back to us to share more information with us.
Thanks for having me, Auntie. Always a pleasure.
Always, always a pleasure. Melvin Henry there, who is technical manager for Newport-Fersan. Just take a quick word from Newport-Fersan, and then we're wrapping the show for today.
Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions was brought to you by Newport-Fersan Jamaica Limited, the first on the land.